always thought it was a dramatic notion to find evidence of adultery like catching them in the act or getting anonymous photos in the mail. Instead, I discovered my fiancé's adultery when looking through his laptop for a recipe we had saved. I'm Kinley, and 3 weeks before to my wedding, I was searching Trey's browser history for a butternut squash soup recipe. It was bookmarked by us. I then discovered dozens of private Facebook exchanges between him and Elise, his accounting coworker. Baby, I miss your touch. Last night was incredible. Kinley barely notices because she has been so focused on her job lately. My hands trembled as I scrolled through months' worth of late-night meetings, photos, and texts. The timestamps indicate that their affair started just after our engagement party. "What are you doing?" I was surprised by Trey's voice. He was standing at the doorway of our home office, taking a cup of coffee. "How long?" I asked in a reasonably steady voice. "What are you talking about?" He came closer, but stopped upon seeing the screen. "You are snooping around in my personal emails, Elise's personal correspondence." "Really?" I turned the laptop to face him. "You said Elise was only a coworker when I asked you why you were often late for meetings. It's not what you think." "Don't." I held out my hand. "Please, don't look. You've been so distant lately. Consistently arriving for work late, discussing that overseas job. I am thus responsible for this." When I lifted my engagement ring, my finger felt like it was burning. "I have needs, Kinley. And your career has been more important than mine recently." I slipped the ring off and placed it on his desk. "We haven't gotten married yet. Thank you." His mother Faith called within an hour. In my car, parked outside our favorite coffee shop, I was trying to regain my breath. "My dear Kinley, let's talk about this rationally." Her well-educated speech was infused with false concern. Before getting married, every couple has challenges. He tricked Faith for months. Men may go off track when they feel abandoned. If you had focused more, you could have performed better. I laughed bitterly. I coordinated every aspect of our wedding while working a full-time job. And that's precisely the problem. Husbands should come before wives' careers. But I suppose this behavior explains why at 29 you are still unmarried. On my phone, there was another call. "Mom." I decide to ignore it. "You are destroyed goods now, my love," Faith continued. "To quit this marriage would be foolish. Would you be desired by anybody else?" I hung up and went into the coffee shop. I could not get my phone to stop buzzing. Communications from my sister, mother, and father. "Give me a call immediately, Mom." Faith told me all about it. "Mara, don't allow a single error destroy your future." "Dad, your mother is really upset. This has to be resolved." To distract myself, I grabbed my usual cup of coffee, sat in the corner, and opened my work email. A new message was delivered by Sierra. In the global office, I caught sight of my colleague. Subject of the related letter. "It's official. The transfer was approved. You should call me immediately." My hands were shaking when I downloaded the file. It was present. A formal offer for a senior strategic position at our European headquarters. The job had been described as a pipe dream by Trey. My phone rang again. This time it was my mother. "Are you crazy?" she demanded. Faith's call brought tears to my eyes. He cheated on his mother a lot. "All men make mistakes from time to time. You're not getting any younger, Kinley. Do you like to pass away alone? It's better to be by yourself than to be betrayed. You're overstating things. Faith informed me that Trey would disregard your enthusiasm for your work if you apologized." "Apologize?" My voice cracked. "For what reason? Working hard. Ambition to be difficult. Unmanageable." He looked elsewhere, which made sense. As I stared at the offer letter on my laptop, something solidified in my chest. "You're right, Mom. I'm out of control now. You're beginning to make sense at last. I have to go. I'm speaking with HR over the phone about canceling my wedding leave." I hung up and looked at my email before she could respond. My fingers raced swiftly over the keyboard as I typed. "Sierra, I agree to the position. When can I start?" My phone displayed another text message from Faith. "I hope you're ready to request forgiveness. It's your only chance to be joyful." I smiled and drank my coffee, whispering to myself, "Go ahead, write my funeral obituary. I'll be too busy writing my story of victory. What a beautiful outfit." The consignment store owner responded while carefully examining my brand new wedding dress. "You'll get $3,000 from me. Deal." I quickly signed the papers without taking a look at the ornate beading that had once excited me. My phone was buzzing. Another call went unanswered by Mom. I had been avoiding her attempts at intervention for the last 2 weeks by posing as the upset soon-to-be bride and quietly preparing to approach. The proprietor of the shop handed me the check. "Are you sure of this, honey? Sometimes people regret their actions. I'm sure." I placed the check in my handbag and headed straight out into my sister Mara. "Really?" She gestured towards the shop. "Have you sold your dress already? Why would you wish to keep it intact?" "Mom has been trying to get in touch with you for days. Faith has invited everyone to join her for dinner tonight. She wants to talk to someone." I laughed. "There is nothing to talk about." "Don't be stubborn. Faith just cares about what's best for you." Her words, "Trey is devastated." "Is that why he's already dating, at least publicly?" Mara began to move uncomfortably. "He is only digesting," Faith says. "Don't tell me what Faith said." Many passersby turned to gaze. I lowered my voice. "Faith has gotten to me." When I returned to my apartment, I continued packing, carefully designating boxes for storage or transit. I received a message on my phone from Sierra. "These are okay. Your unit is ready when you are. In addition, Ray would like to know whether you are free for dinner the following week when he comes to the region." My relocation was unexpectedly endorsed by Ray Woods, our global CEO. Despite the fact that I had only met him twice, his encouragement had helped me advance more quickly. The doorbell rang. "Mom, you don't even have on clothing." Glancing at my yoga pants and t-shirt, she barged in. "Dinner is in an hour. I'm not going anywhere." Faith took extreme measures. I don't care how much trouble Faith is having. I continued taping boxes. Finally, she saw how packed the apartment was. "Why all of this spring cleaning? Candy, Crawford, put an immediate stop to this crap. You're acting like a child." A child I straightened up. A child would cry out and beg. A child will believe it if you tell her that she is worthless without a ring. I'm also not doing it. No one said you were useless. I was what Faith called broken goods. You said that I was marryable. I was doing my best to help. Your entire future will be lost if you make one mistake. My future does not lie with Trey or any other man. She was invited to the wedding by me. It is within your power to rebuild Faith. That night, I attended Faith's dinner party, not because I gave in, but because I wanted to see their faces. I put on my best black dress, wore little makeup, and forced myself to seem respectable. Faith governed from her dining room tray at her right hand. Wearing my previous position, Elise was sitting next to him, trying too hard to fit in. "Faith, your smile was so sharp, Kinley. It was brave of you to come." Sitting at the far end, I gave a mute nod. During supper, I could feel their sadness and hear their whispered conversation. "It's a bad thing. She looks awful. It's unfortunate that she had such promise for her age." Beginning again. I picked up my meal, acting like the broken ex-fiancé, until a towering figure entered the dining room via the open door. "I apologize for being late," Ray Wood said, instantly taking charge of the room. "The traffic was awful." He approached my end of the table directly. "Kinley, I'm glad I got you before you made your big move." Faith's spotless tablecloth platters were splattered with scarlet as her wineglass slid. His dish clattered against the fork. "Ray." For the first time that night, I truly smiled. "I had no idea you would be here. I wouldn't miss it. We must talk about your involvement in the Paris merger." Completely disregarding Faith's stuttering objections about seating arrangements, he took up a chair next to me. "I don't get it." Mara spoke in a loud whisper. "What part?" "Which merger?" Ray gave me a raised eyebrow. "Did you not inform him of your promotion? I had no idea who was on my side." I answered loudly enough to be heard by everybody. Did not want to appear uncontrollable. Faith's expression became white. Trey was unable to look me in the eye, and I felt anything other than retaliation for the first time in weeks. I was liberated. After supper, Faith cornered me in her bathroom. She gripped the marble counter with her immaculately manicured hands. "Which game are you engaged in?" "Not a game." I put my lipstick on again. "Simply going about my day." Ray Woods does not directly manage mid-level staff moves. "I might not be as mid-level as you initially believed." I did not remove my lipstick. "Please, pardon me." My boss, Tom, was virtually stumbling to speak with Ray back in the dining room. He rejected my application for a project lead role only last week, saying I didn't have the necessary executive presence. "Kinley!" Tom yelled. "We spoke about that leadership opportunity and I've been wanting to bring it up." "It's too late." Ray gently cut in. "A superior one has already been approved by her." "Tom, anything Europe gains is your loss." Tom's face dropped, and I tried not to smile. With his arm wrapped around Elise, Trey was observing me from the other side of the room, his eyes tracking everything I did. Sierra came in from London the following morning. "I got my offer letter in my favorite cafe, which is also where we met. Their faces should have been visible to you." As I stared at my latte, I informed her. It appeared as though Faith had swallowed a lemon. "Excellent." Sierra squinted her eyes. "They deserved worse for what they did." She pulled out a phone to talk about it. "Are you prepared to plan your farewell meal?" "Nothing significant." "Not at all. You can't claim that you need a respectable farewell. I'm thinking about the elite guest list for the rooftop restaurant downtown." She smiled and said there was a lot of champagne. "One very special honorary visitor." "Ray is on his way." He made a conscious effort to fit in. Mentioned making a statement in some way. My boss, Kinley, left me a message on my phone that night. "Let's talk about your transition plan. Furthermore, you are free to move into your corner office whenever you like." I showed Sierra the text. She laughed. "It's remarkable how quickly individuals saw they were betting on the wrong horse and changed their views." In reference to horses, I questioned, "Did you notice that Elise's performance evaluation was leaked? Mysteriously leaked." Sierra grinned as she shared some interesting emails about her promotion. The farewell dinner was held 3 days later. On the rooftop, string lights glowed against the perfect backdrop of the city skyline. I had invited no family members or fake well-wishers to new beginnings, just true friends. Sierra raised her glass because karma was a patient bitch. Everyone laughed. There are clinking glasses. Ray's casual blazer speech and stylishly late appearance drew notice. Someone shouted. Ray rose and raised a glass. "Kinley is an exception to the rule that I don't usually attend employee leaving parties. When I first saw her transfer application, I was pleased. When I first met her, I was convinced. But when I told him how some people tried to put out her light, he paused and looked at me. To put it simply, there are some who believe that being kind is a sign of weakness. Their death." I fought back tears as he continued to illustrate that the best kind of retribution is great achievement. Sierra shoved me. "Smile." She raised her phone to photograph the moment as Ray placed his arm around my shoulders, and we both burst out laughing. Champagne glasses were raised. Perfect for Instagram. "I'm typing quickly," she said. The caption's initial section. Later that night, as the guests were leaving, Ray pulled me aside. But he said quietly, "You know they'll try to stop you. Faith is well liked by everyone, including your old boss. They hate it when someone contradicts them. Try it." He smiled. "That's the only reason I hired you. In London, I'll see you." I checked my phone on the way home. Sierra's post received hundreds of likes and comments, but one in particular caught my attention. "Trey, why are you being treated that way by the CEO of Brand Edge?" I smiled, remembering Faith's words. "You are destroyed goods now, my love." I had a simple answer because he knows when to call it a skill. At home, I found a note. "Falls under my door. The writing style of Mara. We have to talk. I should let you know about what I did." As I clutched the note, the weight of unspoken words weighed on me. No matter what new betrayal was uncovered or what admission Mara made, it didn't matter. In 2 weeks, I would be on a plane to my new life. Let them mutter. Let them wander. Let them write me off. I'm a marriageable person. I was dumping the woman who needed their approval. Sierra's Instagram post spread like wildfire over our social media network. By morning, my phone was flooded with texts. Mom CEO. What have you done, Faith? How desperate, abusing your supervisor. Trey. Now we have to talk. I ignored them all and went to work. The working mood has altered dramatically. After weeks of avoiding eye contact, people wanted to communicate. Do you actually oversee the growth into Europe? One of my colleagues, Lisa, muttered. They're talking about that photo of Ray, before I could answer. Tom arrived at my workstation. Kinley, my office now. I followed him as he closed the door, his hands shaking slightly. Why didn't you inform me about Ray and your relationship? He made a demand. You didn't inquire. Too busy telling me. I didn't have an executive presence. He became red. There was a miscommunication. Take a look at that project. The lead position is still open. I smiled. Don't lose it. My global strategy obligations will keep me too occupied. My phone was buzzing. Give it another go. I missed you, so at least I made a mistake. Is there any chance we might meet? I took it down without responding. Another message appeared. This one was provided by Sierra. Check your email. You will love this. The topic line stated that. Personnel update, accounting department. Elise had been demoted following an internal evaluation. During lunch, Mara made 3 phone calls. On the 4th, I finally answered. Are you able to speak with me? Her tone was tight as she spoke. I must share something with you. The note you left was not dramatic enough. Please, Kinley, it's really important. Come see me at Riverside Park after work. I agreed, more out of curiosity than sisterly obligation. As the day went on, I got a message on my phone that made me feel really cold. Faith, did you really think you could make my child seem that bad? Await the revelation of how you forced him to propose. I sent Sierra a screen grab. They're starting to feel desperate. Sierra, fantastic. People who are in a dire situation make mistakes. We discussed the magazine story, by the way. You're in. You should be a part of their series on women breaking down obstacles. At 6 o'clock, I saw Maura sitting on a park bench looking smaller than usual. What's happening? I sat by her and asked. She took a big breath. Remember when you first saw those texts on Trey's laptop? Hard to forget. No, it wasn't. You could have heard about it from other sources. I gave her a direct look. What, 3 months ago, I had seen them together at that bar near his place of employment. Her voice cracked. They didn't see anything, but I did. The ground seemed to tilt. You knew all that time. Faith saw that I was watching them. Mara pulled me away while wiping her eyes. She promised to settle my school loans provided I remained silent. Said that calling off the wedding would destroy our 2 families. So you helped them? I sounded distant. Strange. My own sister. I deleted the texts when you took his phone. Gave explanations for his late nights. Faith said I was keeping you safe, ensuring my safety. I stood up. You protected him. You protected his mother. We protected your bank account. I'm sorry. I didn't know what to do. Faith remarked, stop telling me what Faith said. A few joggers were stunned by my shout. You watched me plan that wedding for months, even though you knew he was unfaithful. You helped me choose out my outfit. Please. She tried to grab my hand. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. I pulled away. There's nothing to make, is there? We're done. I switched on my laptop and started typing as soon as I arrived home. Regarding the women breaking barriers topic. Dear editorial team, I would like to share my story on work development as well as my experience choosing yourself while everyone else tells you to settle. About understanding that sometimes the people who claim to be defending you are instead standing in your way. My phone rang after Sierra sent me a text. Faith is trying to make up a story about you breaking down. I thought about all the secret betrayals, Faith's threats, and Mara's confession. Let her spin, I replied. The reality hurts worse. I finished my document by adding a last phrase and attaching it to an email. Success is much more delicious when others think you've starved. Trey sent me another message just as I was ready to send. You are making a fool of yourself. Go back to your house. We are able to handle this problem. I blocked his phone, opened my calendar, and wrote down the amount of days till my trip. 2 weeks. 2 weeks remained until I left. My sister had lied to me. The mother who doubted me, and the man who thought he could break me. Give them the impression that I was having a breakdown. I was actually getting better. The magazine editor appreciated my copy. Genuine, honest, and approachable. During our video call, she continued, "We want to use that as our cover story." When I asked, I checked my calendar for the next month's issue. You timed your move precisely. She paused. Are you certain that the private data will be disclosed? Some people may feel uneasy about it. Let them stir. After the call, Sierra and I drank coffee. She had flown in again to help with last-minute moving arrangements. The calls from your sister have started coming in. Sobbing, she said, I need to explain, and slipped into our normal booth. Nothing can be explained. She chose a side. Sierra pulled out her phone and started discussing sides. Faith has been rather busy. Look at this, please. It was shared on social media by Faith. I'm praying for those whose ambition has poisoned their hearts. Success is worthless without family. Delicate, I snorted. What impact is Trey's demotion having? Sierra grinned. Not very excellent. It turns out that he has been taking credit for your work for years without you taking credit for it. He is being true to himself. It seemed more like he was drowning in his own weakness. 3 deadlines were missed only this week. My phone was buzzing. Mom, have you completely lost your mind? She demanded something before I could respond. Faith just told me about this magazine article. How does Faith know that she has friends at the publication? How could you talk about our family's private affairs so candidly? Our family's dirty laundry. I laughed. Are you referring to my sister's part in keeping my fiancé's affair a secret? Keep quiet. Oh, did Mara not tell you that part? I inquired. What are you talking about? Ask her about the student loan debt. Faith received a prize. Learn why I hung up and blocked her. At number 2, Sierra raised an eyebrow. Vicious. They desire violence. They were successful. Later that evening, I heard a knock on my door as I was packing the last of my books. Mara, Mom is losing her mind. She sprang out as I opened the door. She is knowledgeable. Faith has vowed to sue someone for defamation. With what evidence, there is no better defense than the truth. You don't realize how much she can do. Mara grabbed me by the arm. I have proof that she is wealthy and well-connected. All of your bank account transactions, emails, and messages have been erased. Which story, in your opinion, is superior? I tried to protect you by taking Faith's blood money, by seeing me waste a year of my life planning the wedding of an infidelity. You don't know what it's like. Mara's voice trailed off. Being the dissatisfied daughter who couldn't afford to pay for college herself? The one with little brains or ambition? You sold me out to make me feel special, to finally become Faith's favorite. She promised to help me start my own business so I could become a member of their family, in the proper manner, their home. I laughed bitterly. Soon, a prominent newspaper will profile this same family. Great timing, sis. For Mara, the phone rang. Her face went white as she read the message. I let her down, she said in a whisper, face pulling her investment. The club's greetings. I can't. She starts crying. I cannot stay there any longer. Mom continues to shout. Dad won't even look at me. Faith is dangerous. It sounds like a recent problem. Please. She grabbed me by the hand. You are my sister. No. I pulled away. I was your sister when you saw Trey cheating. I was your sister when you helped him hide it. I was your sister when you told me to forgive him. I opened my door now. I'm just the lady now since you tricked me into paying a debt. After she left, Sierra called. The item will be printed tomorrow, she said. Rez added a quote on finding talent in unexpected places. Faith must be a big fan of that. Oh, it gets better. After seeing a draft of your story, the partnership deal face firm that was pursuing the client stated that they didn't want to be linked to hazardous workplaces. I walked up to my window and looked out over the city I was about to depart from. Are you okay? Sierra asked in a whisper. What do you find funny? I noticed a family walking below with the parents holding their children's hands. They all thought they were protecting me. Mum, Mara, Faith. Rather, they thought they knew what was best for me. Instead, they taught me the most crucial lesson. Sometimes you have to be everything they're scared of, to grow into the individual you are meant to be. Sierra was quiet for a long time. A title is needed for the magazine. You can't manage your composure. I smiled. Fantastic. Like a ton of bricks, the piece dropped. My phone started buzzing about 6 in the morning. Through alerts, texts, and emails. Unmanageable. A tale of a woman who prioritized success above silence went viral in a matter of hours. Even if I hadn't given names, everyone who knew us would have known. An emerging executive avoids damaging engagement and family pressure in order to maintain the status quo. Cover-up of habitual infidelity. Sierra called as I was making coffee. It's everywhere. Have you read the comments? I read the article on my laptop. The remarks were overwhelming. This hits close to home. Last year, I ended my relationship with my fiancé due to similar deception. Finally, someone is speaking up about the tension between family devotion and self-respect. Can we talk about the mic drop moment and the CEO queen's behavior? My work email was equally haphazard. I was getting calls from industry colleagues I had never met. Because of your story, I made the decision to seek for that promotion. Thank you for discussing workplace dynamics. Would you be willing to speak at our Women's Leadership Conference at noon? Lisa rushed over to my desk. They just led Elise away while HR finally investigated the claims of harassment. It turns out that as she did with you, she has been having affairs with other women's partners and then manipulating workplace politics to get them to leave. I thought of all the times Elise had smiled at me in meetings knowing what she was doing with Trey. My phone rang with a text message from Sierra Faith's business. I recently lost a customer, the biggest one. When I entered LinkedIn, I was inundated with connection requests in my inbox. One particularly notable message was left by Faith's former client. You touched a deep chord with your message. Some have questioned our partnership with agencies who do not share our values. Thank you for your courage. Tom arrived at my desk, seeming nervous about your transition plan. Ray wants you to handle the Miller account directly before you depart. That's our biggest customer, Ray insisted. Stated that by evening he hoped to show them what genuine leadership looks like. I created a thread in an attempt to piece together the whole story because marriageable soccer was so common in my community. A widely circulated report exposed the son of a local agency owner. A number of sources attest to the prevalence of workplace harassment. The former fiancé is now spearheading global growth while the ex is receiving a professional evaluation. My doorbell rang. The camera tray caught my attention. Please, he called through the door. We have to talk. No, we don't. Mom's business is going down. Your work. What you did. I altered your choices or results. I was mistaken. We miss you. Elise was unimportant. Many people's relationships appear to have been unaffected by her. He was facing away from the door. Everyone is talking. Clients are vanishing. Mom is having panic episodes. Please tell them it wasn't about us, but about your mother and us. And all those who thought they could hurt someone and said it was for safety. My phone lit up when Ray sent me a message. I came across the story. It was the perfect moment. The board wants your move to go as quickly as possible. What time can you leave? Another warning came in the form of an email from the magazine. The reaction has been amazing. Do you think a follow-up piece on workplace empowerment would be interesting? Sierra then sent me an SMS. Turn on the local news now. I saw Faith with reporters gathering outside her business as I switched on the TV. These charges are completely false. While she was talking, a well-chosen photo was shattering. Her hands were shaking as she clutched her expensive handbag. My child is the victim of a spiteful ex-fiancé, the reporter broke off. Sources claim that several employees have reported comparable instances of harassment and cover-ups. Would you like to speak through the door? I heard the ring of Trey's phone. His voice twisted in panic. Calm down, Mum. No, I didn't know about the other complaints. Yes, I am aware that the board meeting is tomorrow. I don't see why Elise is threatening to talk. I got my laptop open and emailed Ray a quick message. I can leave next week. The sooner the better. He answered right away. Fantastic. The piece slipped my mind. That's the only reason I hired you. In London, I'll see you. An anonymous caller sent one final text message. Do you think you've prevailed? We'll see who makes it abroad, darling. I showed Sierra Trey's cousin, Imran. She also said that he works at our London office. He's not delighted with your entrance, apparently. As evidence, I preserved the mail. Let them play their games in London. I had changed, and they no longer thought they could break me. I was uncontrollable, unstoppable, and just getting started. Imran made his move during the London office's yearly networking event. During my 3 months there, I had escaped his little attempts at sabotage. But tonight, he had an audience. Everyone. Everyone. He clinked his glass, a bit drunk. Did you realize that our most recent transfer has an interesting history? Sierra, who had flown in for the event, grabbed my arm. Don't answer. Let him dig his own grave. When Imran said, tell them politely, tell them that you slept your way to the top, how you destroyed my cousin's reputation to get revenge. It was quiet in the room. Ray would have gone forward, but I held out my hand. An interesting theory. I made a polite comment, but I'm curious whether any part of my revelation of workplace harassment aggravates you more, or that I'm doing your homework better than you are. There were murmurs in the audience. Imran had lost my job, and everyone knew it. He growled, "You think you're so clever." However, we all know that Ray sent you here for a reason. I brought her here. Since you were busy writing your familial ties while she was actually achieving her achievement, Ray's words relieved the tension. He turned to look at the crowd. Kinley, should we share the Q4 results in connection with that? Imran's cheeks turned pale. The quarterly numbers had just arrived. His team is 40% inferior to mine. I smiled, actually. Why don't you take the initiative, Imran, because you are so intrigued by my work? He surged forward, wine gushing from his goblet. You are a cunning person. Security swiftly arrived and hauled him away as he swore. Phones recorded everything. All right, Sierra grinned. Social media users will find interesting stuff from that. At my London flat, later that night, I rummaged through the flurry of supportive messages from colleagues. One of Mara's emails caught my attention. I finally moved out. Mum doesn't talk to me, which is probably for the best. I'm now residing with my dad's sister. After reading your article, she comprehended. She expresses regret that she didn't exhibit the same bravery when she was younger. P.S. Faith's shop officially closed last week. I deleted it after starting and stopping. It included an image of a mother in a small apartment surrounded by packing boxes. She seemed younger, in some respects more like the sister I used to know. My phone rang. Sierra, have you had a chance to check your work email yet? The video of Imran's breakdown was shared to the board. Nepotism-related hiring practices are beginning to be examined. I'll assume. First, Faith's referral system. The very same one. Oh, and next month at the leadership conference, you have been invited to deliver the keynote presentation. I opened my calendar and froze. The conference room seemed familiar. Sierra, you were planning to get married here, correct indeed. Isn't that poetic? Ray had left us a note. The board wants to present the new worldwide strategy. I'm ready to show them what real leadership is all about. I got another email from Mum. The subject line was simple. Perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps strength is deeper than obedience. Perhaps, I'm sorry, short and enigmatic, according to my mom's fashion sense. But that was something. My doorbell rang. Sydney was holding a bottle of wine from this distance. "How is the gala's drama?" she said as she walked in. "I thought you would need this." We sat on my balcony and gazed out at the London lights. "You know," Sydney talked as she poured the wine. "When you first arrived, people assumed you were running from something. And now they understand that you were going towards something. Something bigger than the unrest in their small town." My phone buzzed, and I received another message from Trey. For the first time in months, he made contact. "They're disassembling everything. Mom made the network, the linkages, everything." "Are you content now?" Sydney smiled and kept making it about himself when I showed it to him. "Some people are constants in their behavior. But you did." She raised her glass till it became unmanageable. "To being unbeatable." I corrected it later that night when I was by myself on the balcony. On my laptop, I began working on my keynote speech. The cursor flickered when the title changed from unmanageable to unstoppable. How, after losing everything, I was able to find my identity. My phone flashed a final message from Sierra Reyes about a UN position for a regional director. I smiled when I remembered what Faith had said all those months ago. "Would you be desired by anybody else?" It turns out quite a few people, but not the ones who tried to break me. The conference room was filled with anticipation. Through the backstage curtain, I could see how the site of my last wedding had been transformed into something far more meaningful, a celebration of achievement rather than surrender. 5 minutes. Sierra squeezed at my arm. "Will you be ready to face your hometown prepared from birth?" I tidy my blazer and finish my presentation notes. On the first slide, it read, "Success is the best kind of retribution." When I heard Kinley's voice, I turned. Trey stood there, looking oddly tiny in his ill-fitting clothes. "Are you able to speak with me?" I said sardonically. "Your timing is perfect as usual. Soon I'll be on stage. For the end, just coffee, please." Sierra obstructed our path. "All of her time is spent becoming everything you said she couldn't be. Put on your clothes, you're not here," he went on. "Mom is being treated. The business is no longer there. Elise left me and went to work with her employer. I've lost everything. Karma appears to be doing what she is supposed to. We miss you." He tried. "We could start over." Mr. Harrison Ray cracked his voice. "This area is constrained. Security." They were leading Trey away. Ray turned to face me, ready to show them what they've lost. I stepped onto the stage to thunderous applause. There were many recognized faces in the audience. There were co-workers and old friends sitting quietly in the back, including my father. I began by stating that a good revenge story appeals to everyone. However, the goal here is not retaliation. It's related to resurrection. Data success stories and global goals dominated the presentation. But what really captured their attention were the personal touches. I was described as unmanageable by them. "I'm almost done," I said. It was meant as a slight. For me, it was a challenge. I saw movement. Mom took a seat in the back row next to Dad. She looked different, less rigid, more genuine. Sometimes those who claim to be protecting you are actually defending their own limitations. Sometimes the best way to show love is to walk away. And every now and then, I paused to gaze into my mother's eyes. Family may be more about who stays with you than who stays. A standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Later at the reception, Ray pulled me aside. It was decided unanimously by the board. "You can become a regional executive director if that's what you want." "When do I start?" "That's my daughter." He handed me the offer letter. "In Sydney, your moving kit is already being created." A disturbance by the bar attracted attention. Faith had gotten in somehow, making an effort to communicate with various board members. "Just a minute," she implored. "I can explain anything. My son, your son, I made it clear where his choices led him. Like me." She looked over at me. Designer clothes fall freely on her smaller frame. "We were wrecked by you." "No, Faith. You both made a mess of yourself. I simply wouldn't let you destroy me." 2. Again, security arrived. But Faith had one last opportunity. "You will be alone. No family. no husband. Sierra was the one who initiated the action. Together with her family, she presently possesses both, the kind that celebrate achievement rather than suppress it. Reluctantly, Mom arrived as fate was pulled out. She said in a low voice, "That speech about growing together, did you mean it when you wrote that you were sorry?" "I am learning." She clenched her hands. "Your father and I are in treatment, trying to pinpoint our errors." "That's a start, Mara. She's going back to school, imitating you." Before I could respond, Sydney rushed over with my phone. "You really gotta watch this." The conference's hashtag was widely used. Videos of my speech were going viral, but one of Mara's tweets caught my attention. Witnessing my sister refute everyone. "It's possible that unmanageability runs in the family. The moment has come for me to write my story." The event was followed by dinner. I sat between Sydney and Sierra, surrounded by my chosen family. Ray clinked his glass and said, "A toast to our new regional executive director." Cheers poured through the glass. I saw Trey leave the hotel alone. "What do you find funny?" Sierra overheard me say that. Rather, they thought I would be broken if they made me unmanageable. Instead, it gave me invincibility. My phone buzzed as I digitally signed the last contract with HR. I remembered Faith's words. "Who else would want you to see my successes, my true friends, my family's recovery, and my promising future?" I knew what the answer was. Everyone who matters. I raised my glass till it became unmanageable. "To achieve invincibility," they echoed. And just there, in the middle of victory and approval, I realized that marriage isn't always the happy ending. Sometimes the solution is to walk away and create something better than anyone could have ever dreamed. It's not only a case of revenge. That's revolution. Story 2. At last, they arrived at my baby shower with nothing. No present. This is merely a loan document for $15,000 for my brother's vehicle. Unexpected. "You're helping your brother." Dad grinned. Mom added, "Be thankful that we trust you." I simply responded, "I get it," then hit the cancel button on the planned payment. After taking a call 15 minutes later, he yelled, "What did you sign?" At last, they attended my baby shower. No warning, not a message, simply entered. 30 minutes late, loud enough to pull all the attention from the games and gifts. My mom wore her best supportive smile, the kind she rehearses when she's trying to look like a parent. And my dad, as usual, didn't bother with pretending. No present, not even flowers. Just a manila envelope. My dad pulled out like it was a present. "Surprise," he said, placing it in my lap like he expected applause. "You're helping your brother." I blinked. He gestured to the document inside a loan agreement. $15,000 co-signed in my name for a car. My brother had apparently already driven off the lot. My mom chimed in, touching my shoulder like we were sharing a proud moment. "Be grateful, we trust you. This is a big deal for him." That's when it hit me. They weren't asking. It was done. Scheduled to process Monday morning, my signature had been forged. Or worse, lifted from the times they'd needed help with paperwork before. The room was still buzzing with party chatter, a table of cupcakes, untouched pink decorations swaying under the AC. I just smiled quietly, unlocked my phone beneath the table, opened the banking app, navigated to the pending transaction canceled. That was it. 15 minutes later, my brother's phone rang. I watched from across the room as he answered, nodded, then shouted, "What did you sign?" He looked straight at me. I didn't flinch, just kept sipping from the plastic flute of sparkling cider my cousin had handed me earlier. He stormed out. My dad followed. My mom stayed long enough to mutter something about how I was making a scene even though I hadn't moved, but inside something had. It didn't hit all at once. That would have been merciful. It came in layers, like peeling back rotten wallpaper and realizing the whole wall is molded. That envelope wasn't the first offense, just the most recent insult on a ledger. So long. It should have its chapters. Because as I sat there watching the room pretend nothing had happened, something clicked. This wasn't a one-time overstep. This was routine, a system they built, and I'd been the foundation quietly, repeatedly. Foolishly, I thought back to last year, my brother's birthday. I'd covered the dinner $800 tab at a rooftop steakhouse. I didn't even get a slice of cake, just a thank you text. That autocorrect had my name wrong. Before that, the HVAC replacement at my parents' house, $7, $100. We'll pay you back once the taxes hit. My dad had said the refund came. The repayment never did. The time I spotted my sister $2,000 to get her through a rough patch. She posted new designer boots, the same weekend tag still on them in the mirror selfie. But I kept giving, kept swallowing the bile because maybe, just maybe, this time they'd see me. Not as a convenience, not as a wallet with legs, but as someone who mattered. They never did. At my own baby shower, I was a footnote to a transaction, a hose to a humiliation. And still they expected me to smile. And I almost did. I almost let it go again. But then I remembered a memory I hadn't touched in years. Sophomore year of college. I'd just come home for the holidays. First time after the accident that changed everything. I was quiet, adjusting, learning how to live differently. At the dinner table, I offered to help with dishes. My hand slipped a plate, shattered. My mom laughed, not out of cruelty, but dismissal. Guess some things you'll just never be good at. My dad didn't look up from the TV, my brother whispered. You shouldn't have come back. They thought I didn't hear, but I did. And I remembered. I remember being their afterthought for decades. The strong one, which was code for the one we can ignore because he won't explode. I remembered every time they used "you're so independent" as an excuse to never show up, to never call, to never ask how I was doing. Even when I got pregnant alone on my own terms. They never offered help, never sent a card, barely acknowledged it. But now I was useful again. Now they needed a signature, a safety net. Now they showed up with a loan document. No gift. No. Congratulations. No. How are you holding up? Just a forged line on a contract and a guilt trip about family obligation. And that's when I saw the full shape of the thing. I give, they take. I show up. They left me out. I stay quiet. They assume consent. And it wasn't random. It was trained, conditioned, expected. Because every time I let it slide, they built the next insult a little bolder. They didn't just disrespect me. They discounted me. They rewrote the story so thoroughly that they believed it. That I was okay with being used, that I liked it, that my silence was agreement, that my understood meant permission. But I wasn't a helper anymore. I was the product. The infrastructure, the financial institution backing their bad decisions. And the worst part, they weren't ashamed. They were entitled. They believed I owed them because I didn't scream, because I didn't fight, because I didn't pull away when I should have. But I was done. I saw the pattern now. Every flashback that had haunted me, the canceled invitations, the backhanded compliments, the withheld affection, wasn't a fluke. It was a blueprint. And now that I'd finally read it, I was ready to tear the whole thing down. Not out of vengeance, out of clarity. They didn't see a sun. They saw a solution. But now the asset was logging out, and they were about to learn what it felt like to lose their favorite resource. They never taught me boundaries, only guilt. They raised me on obligation. That twisted brand of love where sacrifice is the only currency and silence is proof of loyalty. But they forgot to teach me what happens when that currency burns out, when the silent one finally starts moving. I moved fast. By midnight, I was in bed, laptop open, earbuds in baby monitor app on one screen, banking app on the other. The $15,000 loan had been processed but not fully withdrawn. They used a shared savings account to legitimize the transaction, an old joint account I'd set up when Dad was between jobs. I left it open out of habit, their habit of needing help. Big mistake. First step, I froze the account. Second step, I called the credit union, reported the transaction as unauthorized. I knew the system worked in systems. I had receipts, timestamps, logins. My name on the account gave me full rights to dispute. By morning, the loan was locked for review. Then came the real cleanup. I opened the financial audit I'd started months ago, a private doc titled Failsafe, a running log of every dollar I'd funneled to my family in the past 5 years. Rent covers bailouts, phone bills, health premiums, car repairs, mortgage overages, total $117,000. Not even including the wedding gifts, holiday trips, or emergencies that always seemed to happen on 3-day weekends. I started shutting things down like levers in a control room. The car insurance. 6 people under one group policy. Might I remove them all? Let them get their own coverage at their own risk levels. My brother would be the first to notice when the DMV flagged his expired proof. The streaming accounts, everyone gone, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Spotify, family, years of piggybacking off my subscriptions. I deactivated every shared profile, even the one my dad cheekily named Family CEO. The cloud storage. My mother's entire digital photo archive was hosted under my drive. Thousands of baby photos, scanned albums. The folder labeled Memories. I didn't delete it. I just downloaded it and moved it offline. Left her a note, available on request. Respectfully. The security system. I'd installed it myself. Their smart locks, their alarms, their thermostat, all wired to my business dashboard. Within minutes, I removed admin access and replaced their control app with a default prompt. Please contact your system provider. Let them call customer support. And then the kill switch. The trust. 3 years ago, I'd started a legal trust for my child. Future-oriented, bulletproof. What my family didn't know was that I'd quietly included them as contingent beneficiaries. Not out of love, out of obligation. Just in case I told myself that morning, I rewrote the trust, removed every one of them. My mother, my father, my brother, their names vanished with the click of a key. I wasn't their legacy. I was their fallback. Not anymore. At 10:37 a.m., I got the first message. My dad. Hey, bank. Saying something about the loan. You fix that. No punctuation, no apology. Just assumption. At 11:02, my mom followed up. They need your signature again. Honey, don't be difficult. That word again. Difficult. The crime of having boundaries. I didn't reply. Instead, I logged into the auto loan system, submitted a fraud report, uploaded a scan statement annotated in red arrow to the forged signature caption. Never signed. Never agreed. Under review. At 1:26 p.m., my brother finally called, didn't leave a voicemail, just sent a text. 5 minutes later. What did you do? I muted the thread. Then I opened my personal document vault one by one. I exported copies of every agreement I had ever co-signed, supported or backed for legal proof. Just in case I wasn't cutting ties, I was keeping records. Let them explain to a judge why they forged a signature on a financial document tied to a newborn's future. By nightfall, I'd reassigned all access rights to my baby's emergency fund, moved our healthcare proxy to my lawyer, and rerouted every tech service in their home to a third-party vendor. They'd always said I was so organized, like it was a hobby. No, it was self-defense. And now it was off. It's the house of cards they built on my silence. Collapse was inevitable. I just removed the last pillar. The best part, I still hadn't said a word to them. No speech, no fight, no drama. Just one quiet message to the loan officer handling the review. If they contact me directly, please escalate. By 9 p.m., my mom called again. Then my dad, then my brother. I didn't answer because this wasn't the conversation face. This was the consequence face. I didn't expect an apology. I expected noise. And that's exactly what I got. It started with the group chat when they hadn't used since Grandma's funeral, suddenly reactivated like it was a family lifeline instead of a landmine. My mother opened the thread with, "We need to talk. This has gone too far." No subject, no salutation, just panic in Times New Roman. My father followed with, "You've embarrassed us. That loan was a gesture of trust, not betrayal." Then my brother, barely trying to contain his rage, "You made things worse for me. You should probably look into this before it escalates. They weren't ashamed of what they did. They were frustrated that things didn't go as expected. The messages came in floods, voice notes, screenshots, warnings, accusations. I watch it all in silence, standing in my kitchen bottle feeding my daughter while they melted down on screen. They thought I'd reply. They thought I'd cave. Instead, I took a screenshot of every message, every accusation, and forwarded them to my attorney. No commentary. Just as discussed. Here's documentation. An hour later, they switched tactics. Phase 2, pity parade. My mom started sending sad photos. Her crying, a blurry pic of my dad holding his head in his hands, a snapshot of a casserole on the stove with a caption, "We made your favorite. Please come over." They really thought baked pasta could erase fraud. Then came the messages disguised as confession. "We were just trying to help your brother. He's going through a lot. You've always been the stable one. We counted on that. Why can't you just understand how hard it is for us?" But none of it was about what they did. It was about how I responded. Because in their minds, the real betrayal wasn't the unauthorized use of my signature. It was the silence. My refusal to engage broke them in ways no shouting ever could. They prepared for a fight. They weren't ready for the absence. And that's when phase 3 hit. They struggled when others started asking questions. I heard from a coworker first. He forwarded me a message his wife had received from my cousin who'd clearly been briefed by my mother. "Just so you're aware, there's been some troubling behavior in the family. Anna has been acting out legal stuff. We're concerned." My coworker included a note. "Dude, is everything okay?" I smiled, sent him the full screenshot of the forged loan document followed by a copy of a dispute case. He replied 30s later. "Never mind. They're insane." But the campaign didn't stop there. They hit Facebook next. A vague post on my mom's page. Sometimes the ones you give the most to end up turning their backs the hardest. We tried. God knows we tried. Then a barrage of sympathy comments from her knitting friends. Her church friends. Her bridge club. "You're a saint. Children today don't understand gratitude. You did your best." They had the audacity to write saint after fraud. That night, I sat down and drafted a message. Not to them, to everyone else. A single post, public, polite, and devastating to those hearing rumors. I canceled a fraudulent auto loan made in my name without my consent. If you need clarity, here's the documentation, and I attached it. Loan copy. Dispute confirmation. My formal email to the lender. A black box over my account number, but every signature visible. I didn't write a caption. I didn't name names. The truth didn't need a villain. It already had proof. Within 24 hours, the narrative started to crumble. 3 cousins liked the post. 2 mutual friends removed comments they'd made on my mother's timeline. 1 aunt called to say she was deeply ashamed. She believed their version. That's when the calls really started. Not messages. 'Cause my mom first. I watched the phone ring. She left a voicemail this time. "You think you've won? You're tearing us apart. You're making it hard for everyone. Do you even care, my dad?" 10 minutes later. "You need to delete the post. It's family business. You don't air laundry like this." Family business, that phrase they use like a muzzle. Like a shield against consequence is they didn't want resolution. They wanted reversal. They wanted me to pretend it didn't happen again. But the dam had broken, and I wasn't interested in plugging leaks anymore. Then came the final escalation at 2:17 a.m. I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line, no greeting, just a PDF attachment labeled loan options, _ reconsideration, _ alternate terms.pdf. Inside, a revised agreement. My name removed my brother's signature. Added $15,000 a line at the bottom. This supersedes all previous drafts and a note in plain text. This fixes everything. Now you can take down the post. I stared at it for a full minute. They thought they could clean the crime with an edit. No apology, no ownership. Just a quiet hope. I'd go back to being their cleanup crew. Instead, I forwarded the email to the bank representative reviewing the transaction. Handling my case, subject line, attempted cover-up. See attached. I wasn't planning on going public. Not really. I thought forwarding the forged loan to the fraud department, posting the clean receipts, and stepping back would be enough. I thought the line would choke itself when it ran out of air. But they brought oxygen. They kept stoking the fire, thinking I'd smother it to protect them. They didn't realize I'd stop protecting anyone. It wasn't rage. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. For years, I kept things quiet. This time, I chose honesty on curated Instagram posts and whispered family narratives on his difficult. And he never lets things go. And for years, I let it stand. Even helped them polish the windows. But not anymore. It started small. A quiet email to the HR rep at the dealership where my brother worked. Hi, I believe a financial document tied to a company loan was forged. The attached PDF includes signatures not authorized by the name listed. I'm submitting this to the lender as fraud, but wanted to alert you as well. No commentary, just facts. Then I sent another email, this time to a client of mine. An account my father once referred to me, whose small firm still ran software under my company's legacy license. Just so you're aware, my family may be attempting to leverage my reputation or name for credit or access. Please direct any requests independently. And don't assume association. No bitterness, just clean detachment. Within a week, I got the first call back from the dealership. The manager didn't say much, just asked if I could confirm the date I received the forged document and whether I had a formal dispute in place. I said yes. Sent the full timeline. 3 days later, my brother was placed on administrative leave. Not fired yet, but the mask had cracked. They thought I wouldn't go this far. That was their mistake because I wasn't going anywhere. They came to me with pressure, emotional manipulation, and false promises. So I responded. Not with rage, with receipts. I took every message, every voicemail, every passive-aggressive post and archived it. Dated, indexed, sorted. Then I launched a private blog. Not viral, not dramatic, just a clean chronological recounting titled What Really Happened, A Family Story and Documents. Each post was brief. Entry 1. The baby shower, $15,000 auto loan. Surprise. Entry 2. Forged signature. Timeline of events. Entry 3. Group text. Meltdown. Screenshots and analysis. Entry for the cover-up email. No rage, no commentary, just facts and PDFs. I didn't even share the link, but someone found it because within a week I started getting messages. Quiet ones from extended family, from old teachers, from friends of friends, from a girl I hadn't spoken to since high school who messaged. Just read your blog. I had no idea. Respect that word. Respect something my own parents never learned to give without conditions. Then came the tipping point. The blog link somehow landed in my mom's church group chat. I know this because she left me a voicemail. I'll never delete. Her voice was shaking. Not with sadness, with panic. You need to take it down. People are asking questions. Your uncle called this last night. He said we're a disgrace. What have you done? I hadn't done anything. Just showing the receipts. But for people like them, truth is exposure and exposure is war. Because in their world, image is everything. They could handle dysfunction. So long as it was private, they could handle pain so long as it was packaged. But this was naked and they were terrified. My dad didn't call. He sent an email. One line, I hope you realize you've pushed this family to the edge. I stared at it for a long time, then replied, I didn't start the fire. I didn't ruin the image. I just stopped covering it. And then I posted that to entry 5, the final post, because that's all it took. I didn't scream, didn't curse, didn't beg. I didn't fight them. I just shared the facts. And they couldn't look at it without recoiling because the truth wasn't violent. It was inconvenient. And for people who built their lives on curated deception, that was enough to destroy them. They came on a Sunday morning uninvited, unannounced, just stood on my porch like nothing had happened. My mom wore that forced smile she reserves for manipulation disguised as concern. My dad stayed behind her, arms crossed, like backup. she didn't ask for but knew she'd need. I didn't open the door, just stepped outside and waited. "We want to talk," she started. "You've made your point. Now let us make ours." I said nothing. "You've gone too far," she added. "This has hurt everyone. Some things are better handled privately." My father cut in. "You don't destroy your family over one mistake." That word again. Mistake, forgery, lies, manipulation. But to them, just a hiccup. Then came the truth. "We need you," she said. "The loan's frozen. Your brother's gone. We're drowning. Now we miss you. Not, we're sorry. Just, we need you." I looked at both of them and finally spoke. "You didn't lose a system. You lost a son." They froze. "You brought a forged contract to my baby shower and called it trust. You built this family on guilt and silence, and I lived in it until now. But I have a daughter, and she will never learn that kind of love." My mother's eyes welled up. "So that's it. You're cutting us off." I nodded. "You didn't lose dinner. You lost me." I handed her the welcome mat she'd once gifted me. Cheap metaphor, but fitting. Then I turned and walked inside. No slamming doors, no final blow, just silence. And this time it wasn't mine to carry. It was theirs. Story 3. My family blocked me from the group chat during my wedding. Then I came across pictures of them on vacation in Hawaii. Caption the families that are now complete. I only sent one message. While it lasts, enjoy it. I removed my name from the family business that day. The payroll account was frozen. My dad received a call from the Internal Revenue Service a week later. He knocked on my door for 20 minutes that night. When I opened it, it wasn't just that they weren't there that surprised me. They blocked me from the family group chat at that precise moment on my wedding day. I recall waiting outside the location immediately following the ceremony. Everyone was making their way to the reception hall as the sun was lowering and the sky had a gentle golden hue. Emma was laughing with her bridesmaids about the wind catching her veil. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. When I looked, I saw that it said, "You have been removed from Smith Family Core." I had assumed it was another congratulations message. No context, no warning, simply gone. As if it were written in a foreign language, I gazed at the screen. My initial thought was that it was an error. Perhaps Caleb accidentally tapped something. Perhaps Dad was trying to change the group photo or mute notifications because he was confused. That group chat has existed for 8 years. Birthdays and holidays, news about the family business, everything passed through it. However, when I attempted to open it, nothing. I couldn't get in. At that point, I became aware that they were absent. Their table was empty of chairs. As a result, the chairs were arranged precisely. Mark, Caleb, Mom, and Dad are all empty. The waiters were constantly checking for tardiness. Alan, my closest friend, asked if they were stuck in traffic. I simply shrugged. I did not want to spoil the night. The fact that they had RSVP'd more than once made matters worse. They had filled out the online form, texted to confirm again the previous month, and even discussed their attire. My mother went to great lengths to avoid conflict with the bridesmaids. Mark invited his girlfriend to attend. "Yes," I replied. They weren't merely anticipated. The damn plan included them. Before taking family pictures, the photographer kept asking if we wanted to wait for them. I continued to put it off. Eventually, we simply left them out. During dinner, Jody asked in a whisper if there had been any interaction between us. I told her I had no idea. That was the reality. I didn't receive a response until the 3rd day of our honeymoon. Before going to our cabin rental, we were in Napa only for a few tastings. I opened Instagram to see Emma selecting a bottle, merely by habit. Then they appeared standing on a Maui beach. They are all 4 smiling, holding cocktails, and wearing matching floral prints. Even his father, who never takes pictures, had Mark's arm around him. The caption said that the family was now complete. I merely sat there. No passion, no tantrum. Simply empty. 2 asides. At first, she remained silent. Simply place her hand over mine. I informed her that I had one item to send. From her phone, I launched WhatsApp. She typed one message while still in the group. "While it lasts, enjoy it." I opened my laptop after that, Smith wrote. My dad wasn't the only one in logistics. I had been making it a reality for the past 6 years. I was the one who got us online even though we were co-owners. Got the job at Walmart. Half of the logistics were automated. For transactions exceeding $10,000, I would configure the dual signature protocol. He had no idea how to use it. I deleted my name from the company registration after logging in. I put my shares in a holding pattern that resulted in their freezing. I also froze the payroll account, which is crucial. Withdrawals must be approved by me. That Friday was payroll due. I stayed out of the spotlight, did not speak up, let the quiet do the talking. I received a call from an unidentified number a week later. Didn't respond to Dad's CPA's voicemail. The IRS had apparently noticed some disparities, missing paperwork and 2 years' worth of unpaid state taxes. And the amusing part, they couldn't have produced half of the necessary financial records without me. Before I even got to the front door that night, I heard the knocking, 20 minutes straight. I took a while to respond. I held him up. He was standing there when I opened the door, looking red-faced and sweating as if he had been in hell. And what he said first, "What did you do?" For a few seconds, I allowed the silence to linger. He anticipated that I would recoil, defend myself, or perhaps even offer an apology. I simply waited while leaning against the doorframe. He moved forward as if he were going to enter. I remained motionless. "The payroll was frozen by you. Are you aware of your actions?" I gave a nod. "Yes, I am fully aware of my actions." He would get somewhere if he continued to talk like that. Claimed that the drivers threatened to walk. That was already in the warehouse crew's possession. Penalties for missing deadlines were demanded by 2 clients. Claimed that because my credentials were linked to the online reporting, the accountant was unable to even file. The one thing he believed would shake me was then dropped. This morning, the IRS called. 5 years' worth of returns are being examined. 5. They believe we have been concealing our earnings. If this isn't fixed, we're all going to collapse. That word struck a different chord. We're all falling. I reminded him that the one guy they excluded from the family chat on his wedding day was not included in this. Apparently, that included everyone who could travel to Hawaii and pretend I didn't exist while grinning for the camera. He attempted to explain that it was simply a bad moment and that they needed space and that it wasn't personal. My wedding gave you the space you needed. That momentarily silenced him. He quickly changed to anger. Claimed that I was being childish, petty, and discarding everything we had worked so hard to build. Then he took a folded piece of paper out of his jacket. After weighing it once, he threw it between us on the floor. I signed the same document 3 years ago, and it was a copy. I had forgotten a clause that was hidden in the early partnership filings. Under certain circumstances, it granted him some partial authority to override financial freezes. However, those requirements necessitated evidence of carelessness or deliberate injury. He was going to accuse me of undermining the business, that I did it maliciously. Even though he was bluffing, it was enough to keep the days that followed interesting. His attorney sent a cease and desist letter by Monday. I had responded to mine by Tuesday with a thorough audit of all the financial decisions I had made since joining, including the ones I had flagged over the years, all of which I had screenshots of and several of which had verged on tax fraud. I kept most of it from Emma. Although she was aware of the outline, I spared her the anxiety. Before my family's chaos spilt into our new life, I wanted her to have at least a few days of peace after we returned from our honeymoon. For the first time in 2 months, Mom texted on Wednesday. "Could we please have a conversation? This is becoming unmanageable." No explanation, no apology. A tiny, delicate olive branch tossed like a discarded tissue. The situation changed by Thursday when the CPA began contacting me directly, even though I didn't reply. Stated quietly that the IRS was investigating more than just the company. They were investigating Caleb, a phony vendor, offshore accounts, and Dad's personal finances. The IRS wasn't merely snooping. They were hunting. And I still hadn't done a single thing. Emma and I were wrapping up our lunch when the call came in. For the first time since the wedding, we had been organizing thank you notes at the dinner table. Things seemed to be starting to calm down. My phone buzzed with an unknown number while we were making jokes about who had the worst handwriting. I took a step back and replied. Richard was the one. A CPA, the family business, and a man I had only spoken to twice in 6 years, and only when something was amiss. He wasted no time. Listen, David, you should be aware of what's going on, even though I know you're no longer involved. He spoke in a sharp click. I didn't even inquire about how he obtained my number. I simply listened. As it happens, the payroll account did more than just bounce a few paychecks when I froze it. It interrupted a mid-transfer transaction that the bank's compliance team had flagged for audit. The account belonged to a shell company that purportedly maintained fleet software. However, that vendor was non-existent. The vendor's founding documents listed the address as a mailbox store in Nevada. Caleb. At that point, everything began to make sense. Why did Caleb always participate in the business in such a casual manner? Why he never had to describe his actual actions? How bad is it? I asked Richard. After a brief silence, he stated that the IRS had now referred the matter to a criminal investigator. They examined every transaction over the previous 5 years, not just one. My father had used my digital signature on a number of documents that I hadn't even seen, and it seems that my withdrawal had revealed the chain of irregularities, fake invoices, inflated contracts, and unreported foreign income. I sat with it for a while after hanging up. I could have left at that moment. See them burn. However, I was still in charge of the backup server, which I had configured for complete financial transparency. It contained all of my emails, contracts, invoices, and approvals, and nobody could access it without my password. I simply locked the system remotely. I didn't even need to remove anything. Emma asked if there was a problem when she noticed me working. I informed her that there was no point in trying to fix it at this time. I received a text from a Jody later that night. The IRS called again and said, "Your dad is in a spiral. Caleb hasn't had any sleep. Your mother is going crazy." It was not gratifying, not just yet. It seemed inevitable. Then I heard a knock at about 9 o'clock at night. Before I looked, I knew it was him. Dad was standing there, the same outfit as last week. His hair was unkempt, as if he had spent the entire day rubbing it through. I didn't have to invite him inside before he accepted. A thick envelope was just thrust into my chest. Go through it. In all of this, you are not innocent. Right here. I remained at the door and slowly opened it. There were printed emails with excerpts of correspondence from 2 years ago between me and a logistics client. I recall that transaction, though, because my name was on the approval line of a big shipment contract. A standard delivery quote was approved by me. He was the one who later changed the invoice to conceal excess money and inflate the delivery cost. If the IRS sees those emails out of context, they won't just come after me, he said, leaning in. They will also pursue me. He believed that I would drop everything because I would be afraid, unfreeze the accounts, log back in, and assist them in cleaning up the mess. Not even blinking. I wish you luck in that endeavor. I said, "You changed those figures." "Not me." His voice changed. After attempting to persuade me, he said that we could clean it up together if I returned right away. Claimed that they erred by skipping the wedding and that it is still a family business. However, we can get past that. He had never even brought it up before, and he believed that was sufficient. All of this would be resolved if he made a passing reference to leaving me on the most significant day of my life. I simply gave a headshake. That bridge was destroyed by you. You're angry now. The fire is getting bigger. He remained motionless for an additional moment as if he had something more to say. He turned and proceeded down the driveway after that. I locked the door after closing it, not to be safe, to illustrate a point. Our former legal counsel sent me an email the following morning. It seems that my dad was attempting to raise liquid cash by selling company shares to a third party in a panic sale, but he was unsuccessful. Every significant asset still had my name attached to it. And the investigation was now as well. I anticipated repercussions, irate texts, threats, and perhaps even a last-ditch voicemail from my mother attempting to mend things. Hearing from someone I hadn't spoken to in more than 10 years was unexpected. I received an email on Friday morning from someone I hadn't seen since high school. My dad's estranged younger brother is Uncle Grant. When I was still in college, he had been forced out of the company. I was always told that he caused issues with the board and mismanaged funds. He sent a brief email. I heard what was going on. I waited for someone to notice it at last. Meet me if you want the full picture. Everything is mine. At first, I didn't respond. I had no idea how to interpret it. Emma insisted that I go. Stated that perhaps knowing what I was truly up against would be helpful, at the very least. So I went to a diner 2 towns over and met him. He didn't appear resentful, but he did look older than I remembered. Simply exhausted. Before our coffee had even arrived, he slid a manila folder across the table. Copies of old bank transfers, emails, and one document in particular that made my stomach turn were all inside. It had to do with agreement. Day to day, 8 years ago, with Uncle Grant's and my dad's signature. The rationale behind the acquisition. Not poor management. Silence, not failure. Uncle Grant had reportedly learned that Dad and Caleb had been using surplus warehouse lease income to fund a side venture, a private shell company operating under Mom's name that purchased and sold commercial trucks at exorbitant prices primarily to our own business. The scam was full circle, draining the company's resources while enriching themselves. Grant would disappear and never talk about it again after learning that it offered him a payout on one condition. He kept the documents in case something went wrong, but he accepted the deal. Now that the walls were closing in and the IRS was circling, he thought it was time for someone else to find out. I took it all. I scanned it, twice backed it up. I thanked him and walked away. The following day, I received a request from Smith and Rose's legal team to attend a mediation call immediately. They wanted to get everything settled as soon as possible. Offer me a discreet buyout of all my shares in return for granting me access to the servers and locked accounts. I didn't pay attention to the message. That same afternoon, Emma came home with news of her own. While shopping downtown, she ran into one of the warehouse workers, Diego, a guy who'd been with the company since I joined. He told her something strange. Apparently, my dad had told the employees that I was the reason no one was getting paid, that I'd sabotaged the system. After a fight with my brothers, he was trying to turn them against me, said I was bitter and unstable. I didn't even get mad. I just laughed because by Sunday, something happened that none of them expected. The IRS didn't just freeze the business accounts, they froze the personal ones too. My dad's, my mom's, and Caleb's, all pending formal investigation. No access, no transfers, no warnings. Emma and I were having dinner when I got the alert. All 3 of them were on a list of financial holds issued as part of the wider fraud probe. They were locked out of their money, everything. I set my foot down, leaned back, and smiled. The house of cards wasn't just falling now. It had collapsed. Monday morning, I woke up to 33 missed calls, 9 from that 10 from Mom. The rest split between Mark and Caleb. Not a single voicemail, just silent panic. By noon, I had received 2 emails from the IRS requesting copies of the backup financial records, specifically the archived correspondence contracts and vendor activity that only I could access. I didn't respond yet. I wanted them to sweat. That evening, I got an unexpected knock. Emma checked the people first. It was my mother. I hadn't seen her since Christmas 2 years ago. She always preferred to play the quiet partner in family disasters. Passive smiling, never directly responsible. But this time, she was the one standing on our doorstep, gripping her purse like it was the last stable thing in her life. She asked to come in. Emma left the room. We sat in silence for a few seconds, and then she launched into a rehearsed apology. She said she didn't know the full story, that she never agreed to skip the wedding, that Dad had convinced her it would be less tense if they just went away for the weekend. She insisted she tried to call. I told her she could have tried harder. Told her I'd seen the group photo. The one with the caption about the family finally being whole. She shifted gears fast, said they were in trouble, that the IRS freeze meant they couldn't pay their mortgage, their credit cards, even their groceries. She said Dad was falling apart, that Caleb had a breakdown, and that the company would be destroyed if I didn't help with everything we had built over the years. She then said something that chilled me to the bone. We are aware that there is an emergency fund. I went cold. Emma and I had arranged for that years ago. A different investment account that is in my name, bound by a trust, not even in the company's operations. We did not record it. Few people were aware of its existence. How, I inquired. She paused. It's possible that your father took some bank records from when you two had joint authority. He believes that funds ought to be reinvested in the company. Without the company, you would not have had it. She spoke as though it made sense, as if she thought it was true. I got to my feet. I don't give a damn about his opinion. We own that money. On my wedding day, you all abandoned me. I owe you nothing. She pleaded, said the words literally. Please. She then made one final attempt at a card. Your dad is going to go public if you don't help. Let's say you planned this and manipulated the books. I chuckled. She winced. They wanted to drag me down with them as they were cornered and drowning. I assured her that I had no plans to halt the inquiry, that I was only holding off on sending the IRS the entire archive because I wanted to see how far they would go. After a moment of stunned silence, she walked away without saying anything more. I turned in all of the emails, backup files, transaction logs, and Uncle Grant's paperwork the following morning. After shutting down the laptop, I took Emma to brunch. Allow them to burn. The investigation officially began 3 days after I sent the archive to the IRS. I was informed that it made the news by Emma. Due to years of tax evasion, a family-owned goods company is currently under federal audit. No names were given, but anyone in the area who knew the Smiths could figure it out. Friends began sending each other texts. Some of my former co-workers contacted me, some in disbelief, some simply to say they always sensed something wasn't right. My father sent me the last message I had ever read that evening. It was a screen grab of a court document written by his lawyer, in which he accused me of violating a fiduciary duty, causing harm to the business, and putting the whole family under financial and emotional strain. He threatened to file a civil lawsuit if I didn't remove the documents. The number was blocked by me, without hesitation. I then deleted my name email profile and everything else after logging into the company portal, which was one of the few things that was still operational. Not in retaliation, not with malice, merely because the moment had come. A few hours later, Mark attempted to call. This time he left a voicemail, claimed that I had overreached, claimed that I ought to have dealt with this within the family. I misunderstood the situation, and we could have had a conversation according to a paragraph that Caleb sent me via email. It's funny. On my wedding day, nobody wanted to talk. All of them failed to appear. Not a single message. However, they discovered their voices when their house was being audited and their accounts were frozen. I didn't respond. They all made decisions. I broke off all communication. I wasn't spiteful when I blocked them. I simply didn't want their poison to continue seeping into the things Emma and I had created. 3 months later, we relocated out of state. The town is clean now. The emergency fund was left unaltered. I resumed private consultations. Emma returned to her teaching. Jody and a few other family members kept in touch, and our life became calm, steady, and genuine. When we got together for dinner, some of our wedding friends would still bring it up. How my family did something that no one could believe. How foolish it was to put a vacation ahead of the wedding of their own son. They only care about control, and when they lose it, they lose everything, according to the consensus of all. It has now been almost a year. I still occasionally receive unsolicited letters from law firms or distant cousins who are trying to catch up. I disregard them. I have a new rhythm and a new home with Emma. Now we discuss children. We take trips when we feel like it. I never imagined that we would laugh as much as we do. I have lost my anger. Just finished. I occasionally tell the truth when someone asks if I miss them. I miss the person I believed them to be. However, that version never appeared, not when it was important, and I won't now either. 6 days after I had assumed that everything was behind me, I received an email that completely stopped me cold. It wasn't a notice. It was from the IRS, not a request. I'm grateful. In a formal statement, one of the case's senior agents acknowledged the importance of the information I supplied. I didn't anticipate it. It stated that several offshore accounts connected to fraudulent vendor payments not just in my dad's name had been found as a result of the backup records I submitted. Other colleagues were present, a few of whose names I knew from previous business gatherings. The email ended with something unexpected, even though 2 of them had already left the country. Based on the records, we will be sending out a subpoena for testimony. Although we think you are not aware of these activities, your cooperation could help us develop the case more broadly. That line caught my attention twice. My dad was no longer the only focus of this. This was larger. Emma discovered something in the mail later that afternoon. A heavy envelope. It was delivered by hand, but there was no return address. No label, no stamp. There were 2 items inside: a flash drive and a letter from Caleb. His letter was apologetic, rambling, and at times desperate. He claimed that Dad had lost his mind, that he was attempting to place the blame on anyone he could, and that he had coerced Caleb into creating the phony vendor accounts about which Mom knew more than she admitted, but kept quiet out of fear of losing everything. He apologized for what transpired at the wedding and stated that he didn't want to go down with them. He was aware that I would never forgive him. However, I might eventually come to understand if the flash drive helped to balance things out. I connected it to a disposable laptop. It contained spreadsheets, voice memos, internal emails, and even a few videos. In one of them, the father was laughing while speaking with someone in another country about how the child signs everything I put in front of him. I was that person. Another showed him describing to Caleb how to avoid banking thresholds by dividing vendor payments into smaller batches. It was sealed. I sent a brief message with all of this information to the IRS contact. Another present. Emma and I sat on the porch that evening. We said very little, just observed the rolling breeze and the darkening sky. And I came to a realization. This was no longer retaliation. It was taking something away. A last cleaning out of everything that attempted to ruin what ought to have been my greatest day ever. Into a betrayed memory. It was just over now. And for good, this time. Story 4. We need to make some cuts, I told my family on my 30th birthday. I can't continue to pay for everything indefinitely. Then start with your brother's 6-figure debt, Dad said, rolling his eyes. I declined. My belongings were on the porch when I returned. The locks were replaced. Consider what you did. I didn't cause a scene, they said. I remained silent. Simply schedule the message. Everything changed the following morning. Cheers to your birthday, Josh. My mother's tone was upbeat and phony, as if she hadn't just made me feel bad for not volunteering to pay off Kyle's auto loan an hour before. At the end of the dining table was where I sat. In front of me was a piece of store-bought cake, a crooked 30-candle drips half-melted wax. With one arm casually slung over the chair, my dad was slouching across from me. One is drinking a beer. With one hand, my 28-year-old brother Kyle, who is unemployed and seemingly allergic to responsibility, was texting while using the other to browse through his phone. His brand new iPhone. Naturally, the one I purchased. I cleared my throat and said that. Despite my racing heart, I made an effort to sound composed. We must discuss the money. Dad gave a grunt. Mom blinked. Carl didn't raise his head. I can't keep going over what I said again. My goal is to create a future for myself. Here, I've been paying for groceries, utilities, and the mortgage. Kyle, I paid off. Last year, I received a second DUI fine. I have to make some cuts. Carl raised his head. Next, you're behaving as though it's charity. I gazed at him. Yes, it is. He chuckled. Whoa. All right. Dad leaned forward after that. People squinted as if I had just insulted the Pope. then begin with the six-figure debt owed by your brother. Isn't that the true problem? Mom shot him a sidelong glance as if she wished he hadn't spoken. Carl froze. I refuse to pay that. Silently, I said, I'm not in charge of that. The room became chilly. Nobody made a move. Dad reclined once more, lips quivering into a sneer-like expression. I guess we know where you stand, he said. The following day, when I returned from work, everything I owned, clothes, books, tools, and the laptop I used for freelancing was arranged neatly on the porch. They had replaced the locks. The door was taped with a note. Consider what you did. It said nothing more. I gazed at the handwriting for a considerable amount of time. My mom is neat, accurate, and unmistakable. I didn't knock. I didn't shout. I refrained from crying. I inhaled deeply, gathered my belongings, and left. I scheduled the message after that. After a birthday eviction and a note that felt like a slap, everything changed the following morning to help us understand how we got here. You would need to go back a decade. Carl totaled his first car when I was 20 years old. Intoxicated, naturally. Mom broke down. I, the golden oldest son with a reliable job and no criminal history, paid the tow fee and gave Dad a loan of $3,000 for repairs after he screamed. He never reimbursed it. Originally intended to be a one-time occurrence, it somehow turned into a pattern. I was to blame for Kyle's college dropout because I failed to assist him with his studies. When he experienced 3 job losses in a year. When he overdrafted his account, I received a lecture about how some people simply struggle more. My mother calls me, guilt-laced and gentle. He's your brother, Josh, my dear. Can't you just cover it this once? And I always did. I paid the rent when Kyle got evicted. I paid the insurance on his car. A car I walked to work and he drove to parties. While Kyle spent his days in the basement working on music and doing nothing productive, I paid for groceries, paid our parents' property taxes when they fell behind, and still managed to pay for night classes to earn my electrical systems certification. The worst thing, he didn't even act appreciative. He even pretended that he was entitled to it. Josh is doing very well, waving his hand as if I were a faceless ATM, he would say. He's got it. Big brothers are there for that. My folks made it up. I had the option to move out. It ought to have. However, my mother would cry every time I brought it up and say, this house only feels like a home with you in it. Don't be dramatic and remind me that I only paid a portion of the bills, such as paying for everything, but the phone plan wasn't sufficient, Dad would say. Kyle, too. Why leave when you've got it so good? He would smirk. Yes, I had a nice time. My brother borrowed money from me to purchase new headphones while I worked 60-hour weeks and hardly saw the light of day. Dad used my paycheck to fix the air conditioner while I skipped lunches to save money. He told me to be thankful that I didn't have to deal with a landlord. 2 months prior to my birthday, everything came to a head. I discovered Kyle hosting a party after returning home from a 14-hour shift. In the living room, I had my gaming PC, which I had been building over the course of 5 years, connected to his sound system. On the couch, his friends were unconscious. Bottles of beer were all over the floor. I had a sticky keyboard. I didn't shout. I simply disconnected everything and returned to my room. Mom gave me a lecture the following morning. You made him feel ashamed, she said sharply. His friend caught you acting like a crazy person. I said they were using my belongings. She yelled, It's not just your house. Here everything is shared. That word spread, like a slap to me. Shared. Similar to the mortgage I paid. I literally had money taken out of my account for the groceries I purchased and the electricity bill. That evening, I reviewed my spending plan. I was very near. I could actually get out this time with just a few more months of saving. Kyle then came up with the brilliant idea of trading cryptocurrency as a new business. Of his student loans, he invested $25,000. He lost it in 2 weeks due to loans he had no intention of repaying. He placed the blame on his friends, the market, and the app. He then faced me. He said, You could spot me 10 grand. As if he needed a lift to the shop to help me get back on course. I chuckled. And I declined for the first time in a long time. The tone changed at that point. I was no longer trustworthy. I was elitist, ungrateful, and self-centered. "Do you believe that you are now superior to us?" one evening after supper, that person asked. "Simply because you have some cash on hand." I said, "I'm not better. I'm simply worn out," Kyle tweeted early the following morning. He hoped I wouldn't notice. However, some only give when they believe they can manipulate you, cut them off, and see their real selves. More than 300 people liked him. I said nothing at all. When my birthday finally arrived, I foolishly and naively believed that perhaps, just possibly, we could maintain good relations. No drama, a small cake, and a quiet dinner. I received an ambush instead. Dad watched me the entire time. "You're daring me to mention money." Kyle is making jokes about how I should open up my non-existent trust fund. Mom's smile is too bright, as if she had enough strength to prevent it all from exploding. Let's cheer. Finally, I admitted that I couldn't continue to pay for everything. The dam broke. Then begin with your sibling. Debt of 6 figures. Not as a joke, though. As an expectation rather than a challenge. They also didn't argue when I said no. They simply tossed me out like trash. However, they made a single error. They failed to remember. He instilled in me the values of patience, silence, and never reacting. Because I had a plan this time. Their note went unanswered by me. Didn't knock. Did not send a text. Did not cry. I simply loaded my belongings into my old Toyota's back seat, packed my bags, and drove to the most affordable motel I could find. The vending machine eats your money without regret, one of those roadside ones where the air smells like cigarettes. With the note still crumpled in my fist, I sat on the edge of the bed. "Consider what you did." Yes, I did. I gave it a lot of thought. I scheduled the message after that. You see, I've learned a few things over the years. One is that each family has its own legend and myth. They tell themselves, "This is how ours went." The reliable one is Josh. Josh always lends a hand. Josh is always there. We can do anything we want because he always shows up. They didn't know. For the previous 2 years, I had been keeping a record of everything. Each and every invoice transfer and Venmo request. I keep the receipt for every time I give someone a handout. Every guilt trip, every passive-aggressive message. "You're being dramatic" every time they say that. I requested that boundaries be recorded, saved, and dated. Then there was the letter I wrote just before my birthday several months ago. When I first began to consider leaving What If I Did, it was not a letter of farewell. It was an all-out confession. How I concealed the second mortgage payment from them. Because I, not the bank, received the call. How I found out Kyle had stolen my identity to apply for a $15,000 personal loan. Refused. Thank God. But the inquiry was still on my credit report. How my parents knew and asked me not to press charges. "Family sticks together," they said. I stuck until I didn't. That morning, the morning after I got thrown out of the house I paid for, I press sent. I didn't just send it to them. I sent it to our extended family. My godmother in Tampa, Uncle Dave in New Jersey, my mom's cousins, dad's siblings, their church group, everyone. Along with the receipts, screenshots, bank records, text messages, voice recordings, all neatly organized. I even included a spreadsheet titled "What Josh Actually Paid For." It went viral within our family and under an hour. By noon, my phone was melting. 26 missed calls from Mom, 8 from Dad, called. Didn't call. He sent one text. "You didn't have to do that. That was cold." I didn't respond. At 12:37 p.m., my Aunt Maria, who I hadn't seen in years, sent me a message. "Good for you. I always knew they were using you. Proud of you, sweetheart." Then came the fallout. Apparently, my parents' reputation in their little suburban bubble meant more to them than I thought. The image of the perfect, close-knit, morally upright family shattered. People started asking questions. Why was Josh footing the bill while Kyle went on vacations? Why did the note on the door look like something out of a Lifetime movie? Why did Kyle have new headphones, sneakers, and tattoos while unemployed? Why did Josh live in the basement like a tenant when he was paying for everything? Dad tried to spin it. We were giving him structure, he told one relative. It was all agreed upon. Wrong move, unattached. The recording from the night they kicked me out. I'd been recording on my phone, slipped into my jacket pocket before dinner. The voice note was crystal clear. Dad, then start with your brother's debt. Me, I'm not paying that, Dad. Then get out, Mom. Consider what you did. They couldn't spin that. The kicker. I also reported the stolen identity case. I'd let it slide the first time. Not anymore. When the police showed up at the house to ask Kyle about the fraudulent loan attempt, things got loud. A neighbor caught it on video. Yelled voices, a slammed door. Kyle shouting something about how he deserved a break. Someone, probably my mom, screamed, "We told you not to make this worse." That clip landed on the local neighborhood Facebook group. And just like that, the family who used to whisper about other people's drama became the front page gossip. I was not present when it occurred. Moving into my new flat kept me too busy. An apartment above a downtown flower shop. Morning sun that is quiet. A kitchen free of the odor of old quarrels. That night, I used the money I should have been saving all along to pay the deposit. With just my laptop and some takeaway and no TV, I sat on the couch and watched the mayhem from a distance. When I didn't answer, they made numerous attempts to call me again. Mom arrived at my workplace. She waited in the entrance hall, red-eyed with my favorite casserole in a Tupperware container, as if that would reverse years of use. We met outside. I stopped her before she could open her mouth. I said, "I'm not going back. Be calm. Cold even." She whispered, "Josh, this family is being torn apart by you." I said, "I just stopped holding it together," and laughed. She winced. I also didn't feel bad for once. It changed at that point. Not only the dynamics within the family. Me? At last I could see them clearly. Not as defenseless parents, not as a frail brother, but as individuals who had to make decisions, several times. And now they had to deal with the fallout. For the first time in my life, it's odd how quiet can seem louder than yelling. I wasn't waking up to the sound of my dad banging cabinets like he was having a fit while wearing a polo shirt, or Kyle's music shaking the plasterboard. I wasn't avoiding my mother's passive-aggressive outbursts in anticipation of the next emotional bomb. Rather, I experienced silence in the mornings. I didn't check to see if anyone had used the last of the milk when I made coffee. I wouldn't have to worry about my wallet going missing for no apparent reason if I left it on the counter. Every purchase, every boundary, and every breath didn't need to be justified by me. Nobody requested money. Nobody asked for an explanation. No one sent me a manipulative text. At first, it was confusing. I kept thinking that the quiet would end, that when I walked in the door, Kyle would be sprawled out on my couch, his shoes on the cushions, and he would ask me if I could see him again. However, they never arrived. The calls continued, I see. Not initially. Mom's voice was shaky and carefully layered with guilt in her lengthy voicemails. "This isn't you, Josh. You have always been the one with strength." The assistant, "Don't let pride destroy our family, please." Dad texted once. "Only one. You should be proud of who you are." I didn't answer. The messages eventually slowed and eventually stopped. I received a handwritten letter from Kyle 3 weeks after I moved out. It was surprisingly brief. "I am aware of my error. I was simply doing what I was always permitted to do. Now, though, everything is against me. Both parents are in disarray. We no longer hear from anyone. You blew everything up. I hope it was worthwhile. Don't apologize. Simply assign blame. They provided me with all the information I required." I didn't respond. I started working on restoring what they had attempted to take away from me instead. We need help with the bills this month, so I decided to sign up for a coding boot camp, something I'd wanted to do for years but kept putting off. I began working as a freelancer in the evenings, saving for my desired future. Not the one who coerces me into giving money. I made some true friends. The kind of people who only asked for honesty. People who didn't give a damn about my earnings, the way I was. I joined a climbing gym in my area. I rediscovered my passion for risk-taking and movement, pushing myself to the limit, not transporting people who wouldn't move. Additionally, therapy was helpful. It turns out that being the fixer for years leaves invisible bruises. It was referred to as parental fixation by my therapist. When a youngster is supposed to act like an adult, both financially and emotionally, she showed me that I was never self-centered. I was worn out. They collapsed back at the old house in the meantime. Mom had to return to her job. She detested it. She had been using someone else's money to play house manager for the past 10 years. Mine. Dad began to drink more. He apparently got into a heated argument with a neighbor who inquired about Josh's predicament. I've heard that Kyle has finally found employment at a petrol station. The duration was 6 days. The manager was then held accountable, as usual. The extended family withdrew. They had witnessed too much pain. The evidence did not support the myth of our contented little family. I also didn't give a damn. I wasn't trying to fix it for the first time in my life. I was not present at Thanksgiving. I spent it with family and friends. Those who didn't tread carefully and instead laughed at the dinner table. I brought pie. They meant it when they referred to me as family. My godmother gave me a card for Christmas. There was a brief note inside. You were worthy of better. And at last you asserted it. You have my admiration. Reading it made me cry. Not because I was depressed, because I felt seen for the first time. After you burn your old life to the ground, do you know what happens? Nothing. No spectacular explosions, no reconciliations at the last minute, nothing but quiet. And I've never heard anything so beautiful. My phone didn't ring with last-minute requests for money or guilt-laced texts for the first time in 30 years. There were no urgent calls about Kyle's license being revoked, about Dad needing help with taxes he didn't anticipate, or about Mom sobbing because we no longer feel like a family. They anticipated my stumbling return. They did it every time. They believed that I would feel bad. They believed I would feel isolated. But this is what really took place. I was liberated. I was able to breathe. I was able to stand by myself. The one I purchased. I'm clean furnished and unconcerned about food theft, key theft, or future demands. I've spent so much time carrying my family around that I've forgotten what it's like to stand up straight. For my own sake, to be unnecessary. I was once referred to as the family's backbone. No, the fuse was me, as well as now that I've left. There is nowhere left for the fire they started around me to spread. But let's go back to them. I met Kyle 2 months after the explosion. It was at a petrol station, of course. Behind the counter was him. Name tag, sunken, crooked eye. Still exuded that phony swagger, but it appeared shabby, like a poor imitation of a more successful version of himself. Josh, he grinned. I was surprised to see you in town. I simply nodded. He leaned closer. You realize that you truly messed up for them? I blinked. You're referring to the time I stopped covering your debt. He gave a shrug. The fallout is still affecting them. You truly created a mess. I gave him a direct look. You think that by making my life better, I'm destroying yours. He stared at the door as if he couldn't believe the ATM had left after I paid for my gas. He's still not understanding. Not one of them does. Because Kyle and others like him don't learn from mistakes. Not until the funds are exhausted and the publicity wanes. And I'm not going to stay to see that lesson unfold. The thing is this. Nobody talks to you about leaving a toxic family. The pain is not in the distance. It's the knowledge that you've never experienced unconditional love. You were appreciated for your sacrifice and your silence, your financial account. However, love isn't love without respect. It's leverage. So would you ever speak to them again when they ask, No, I don't hesitate. For the first time, I love myself more than their acceptance. I used to want their approval. Similar to oxygen. Every promotion, every loan I paid back, every good grade. A frantic wish that perhaps they would notice me this time. However, they only saw my ability to help them. I was never beneath it. I see myself now, a man who settled 3 non-existent mortgages. He never tried, but a man stayed up late to tutor his brother. A man who always felt like a visitor in a home that kept the lights on. And lastly, a man who stopped talking. I've started over in my new life. And guilt or obligation aren't the basis this time. There is peace. It's a decision. I own it. On the weekends, I go hiking, read, and attend classes. I'm taking photography lessons. For years, I put this off because I had more important things to pay for. I'm dating someone who asks about my day, doesn't call me selfish for setting boundaries, and doesn't need saving. I occasionally lie in bed late at night thinking about the child. I was once. The one who walked carefully through his own house, who ceremoniously gave him his paycheck, and who thought that if you worked hard enough, they would love you properly. And you left, I whispered. You succeeded. They are unknown to you. No more silence. Allow them to rumor. Permit them to embellish the tale. Let them say, I'm not thankful, dramatic, chilly, because this is the reality. Without me, they will never say it aloud. Without me, their system fell apart. Without me, their lives were not the same. At last, the truth was spoken aloud, unquestionably raw. I didn't even need to shout. I simply turned to leave. Additionally, leaving the door locked can occasionally be the most subdued act of rebellion. Story 5. Ruby Marshall is my name. I am currently standing in the Grand Resort by Lake Arrowhead in California, and I am 37 years old. The location where, in an unwritten custom, my husband's family gets together each summer. I've never really been invited into this tradition. She forgot the sauce again, I promise. As soon as I carried a tray of bread into the banquet hall, my mother-in-law, Elaine, muttered. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was enough to make the other 3 people at the table turn and stare at me as if I were a careless waiter. As a structural architect, I provide consulting services for major urban redevelopment projects ranging from Denver to Los Angeles. However, I am only Connor's wife to the Hartwell family, particularly Elaine, a voiceless woman who works with computers or drawings. I never really had anyone ask me what I did. I was just my husband's extension in their opinion. The courteous shadow at the end of the table quietly clearing away after meals and grinning when allowed. I promised myself that I wouldn't let it affect me each time I came here. Can she even eat salty food was one of the comments that I chose to ignore. Or Ruby. Could you please get more napkins? That eroded a sense of pride that had already been eroded by years of marginalization. Their favorite resort, the Ridgewood Estate, exuded old-school luxury in every way, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get used to feeling inferior to the doormen. A stone fireplace larger than the living room I grew up in, polished mahogany and crystal chandeliers. But I felt smaller than ever as I stood in the midst of all that grandeur. My husband, Connor, teaches American history at a private university. Good-natured, calm, and able to speak nonstop for 3 hours about the Cold War. But when I needed him on my side, he was there. He would merely squeeze my hand beneath the table and whisper when his mother said I sounded a little sour, or when his sister winced at my Macy's dress rather than Chanel. It wasn't her intention. You are aware of that. Yes, but comprehending does not imply eternal acceptance. Like the previous 8 years, I arrived this year wearing a simple dress and the same courteous smile that I had conditioned into my reflex. And I was the one asked to get more plates just like the previous times. Front desk employees were mistaken, regarded less like the oldest daughter-in-law and more like a lost visitor. Connor's cousin once turned to me at the first dinner of the trip and asked if I could help bring out the wine. Since you appear to know the kitchen quite well. I chose a different response, which is why I didn't react, not because I was weak. When you're working on something larger than they could ever imagine, silence can be the most effective form of rejection. The moment Elaine introduced me to her friend is still fresh in my mind. This is Connor's wife, Ruby. I believe she does something digital. Then, as though to protect me from having to explain something too difficult, she smiled. They never spoke to me. They always spoke around me, as though I were ornamental, unimportant, and inoffensive. I once believed that they would view me differently if I were patient and sincere enough. I wrapped all of the Christmas presents myself the first year I was a part of the family, carefully labeling each one for each of Connor's cousins. I organized a surprise birthday celebration for his father the following year. Due to his allergy, Richard hired a private chef and created a menu devoid of soy. However, Connor's cousin's wife, who brought one homemade butter cookie, was thanked. Brianna, thank you for everything. Elaine, who neglected to write my name on the thank you card, said, "You're very considerate." Another time, I rented the RV and organized the entire camping trip in Xi'an, but the tents organized the shopping list. However, Connor gave me an introduction when we got there. Everyone is familiar with Ruby. It was a compliment, but it made me feel more like a multitasking maid than a partner. She never minded the heavy lifting. In the laundry room, in the car, parked outside Whole Foods, in the shower with the water running so no one could hear, I used to cry quietly. The only time Connor ever inquired about my well-being was when I left my phone in the living room, which was the only time I thought he would notice. He either didn't want to or didn't see everything else. Everyone adores you. Simply put, you're too sensitive. Every time I tried to convey how excluded I felt, he would say this. I eventually stopped saying anything at all. I plunged headfirst into my work. Laser-focused, almost obsessive. I started taking on side projects, modular home designs for flood zones, technical consulting for sustainable construction companies. Some months, I worked over 90 hours a week without a single complaint. All I had was an expanding savings account and an inbox full of offers for new partnerships from strangers. I didn't splurge. Wore clothing from the outlet. Did my own hair. Drove an old SUV with over 120,000 miles on it. To them, it only reinforced their assumption. Ruby was simple. Didn't know how to enjoy life. Someone even asked if I was struggling financially. I smiled and said nothing. During that time, I started paying attention to small-scale real estate. I didn't follow trends. I studied from scratch, taught myself about valuation, cash flow, tax codes. I formed an LLC called Birchlight Holdings to hold all the assets. No one knew I was behind it. 3 years later, I owned 2 small apartment buildings in Idaho, a short-term rental in Bend, Oregon, and a guest house in Utah. Quiet, consistent income. But it still wasn't enough. I needed something bigger, closer. Something that would make the Hartwells take notice. That opportunity came late last spring when I stumbled upon a private listing in an industry group, the Ridgewood Estate. The same resort the Hartwells called their second home was quietly seeking a buyer for majority control. The original owner was aging and stepping away from operations. No public listing, just private offers to vetted investors. I didn't think twice. I called Rachel, a former colleague, now working at a hotel investment firm. We met in Denver, signed an NDA, and began negotiations. "Are you certain?" Rachel asked, eyeing the multi-million-dollar valuation. "This isn't just a cozy mountain condo." I looked her in the eye and nodded. "I've waited too long for this." 7 months later, the deal was closed. I became the largest shareholder of Ridgewood, all through Birchlight Holdings. Connor didn't know. Neither did his family. They just thought the resort had made a few new changes this year because the new owner doesn't understand tradition. I didn't feel the need to correct them. I just quietly fixed every detail they used to complain about, from the noisy air conditioning to the dinner service, and waited for the right moment. And this year, as they returned again, dressed to impress, raising wine glasses and making their usual smug comments, I knew I was ready to stop waiting for their approval. I still remember that night, one summer evening a year ago, when I sat alone on a bench by the lake, the breeze carrying the scent of pine and smoke from the outdoor grill. Connor's family was gathered not far away, laughing around the fire pit with soft music playing from the Bluetooth speaker they brought every year. I was going to join them, but just as I approached, I heard Helene's voice during a phone call. She made no effort to keep private. "Ruby, she's sweet, but she's never really been part of this family. You know what I mean? There's just something off, you can tell just by looking." I froze behind a shaded cluster of shrubs, just empty in a way that scared me. It wasn't the first time I'd heard something like that. I went back to the room, opened my laptop, and sent a single email. Just one line. I agree to the terms. Proceed with final stage. 10 minutes later, Rachel replied, I get it. I'll initiate the ownership transfer process first thing tomorrow. Congratulations. The deal was finalized in just 3 weeks, faster than expected, because I had all the funds and legal documents ready. Birchlight Holdings, the company even Connor had never heard of, officially owned 74% of Ridgewood Estate. Everything was kept completely confidential. It didn't change the logo, didn't fire anyone, didn't make flashy upgrades to draw attention. I simply did what an actual owner should do. Take care of the property. Every outdated HVAC system was replaced. We restructured employee benefits and increased wages for the front desk and housekeeping teams. I signed a contract with an environmental firm to restore the underground water system around the lake, something the previous owner had ignored for nearly a decade. The Hartwells couldn't help but notice the changes when they returned to Ridgewood this year. The check-in system now required ID and credit card verification, even for the so-called familiar names. No more booking rooms through a private call to the manager with the usual best lake view. Same as every year? Ask. As soon as she entered the lobby, Elaine scowled. It's a brand new marble table. What became of the scent of lavender? I took a few steps back and grinned softly. A housekeeper used to get really bad allergies from the lavender, but they didn't care. I played the part of Simple Ruby for the first 3 days of vacation. As they complained about the resort's lack of warmth, Connor's wife continued to sit at the table and listen. When asked to get extra dessert spoons for dinner, they still agreed. I had already made up my mind, so I didn't react. At the Friday night dinner, the new owner of Ridgewood would be announced. The whole Hartwell family and their close friends would be there at the welcome gala. Ethan, the new general manager, was given the exacting task of preparing the speech by me. A synopsis of the long-term goals focus on investing in people and ownership transition. Lastly, the name of the current owner is revealed. I wasn't planning on going out immediately. Before they saw my face, I wanted them to hear my name. I waited that evening on the balcony on the second floor, peering down through the wooden railing. Elaine was repeating phrases like, "Our family has been coming here for decades," while speaking with an old friend. "We really should have a private meeting with the new owner and give them some frank counsel." Calm and collected. Ethan entered the tiny stage. He lightly tapped his wine. The sound echoed through the glass and wood-paneled hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is our privilege to announce the new owner this year as part of Ridgewood Estate's management and development transition. The individual responsible for the resort's long-term sustainable vision strategy and improvements." He hesitated a moment. "Let's welcome Miss Ruby Marshall." When I put my hand on the railing and looked down, I could tell that the time had finally come because of the Hartwell family's shocked expressions. The room seemed to vanish when Ethan called my name. Silverware clattering onto plates caught my attention. Then, with wine spilling over the edge of her glass and soaking the snow-white tablecloth, Elaine leaped up her chair and scraped backward. "What?" Her voice was high and disbelieving as she exclaimed. Connor pivoted. Specifically, I glanced up to the second floor where I was standing composedly in a plain black dress. They would never call it elegant, I knew. His gaze expanded. His mouth fell open a little. He remained silent. I descended the stairs slowly. Everything was irrevocable. Every time my heels tapped the wooden steps, it sounded like a drumbeat. The room was still quiet when I got to the table. Even Connor's nephew, who was 10 years old, had ceased playing with his toy car beneath the table. I stopped next to Connor's chair and gave him a quick glance. "Are you Ridgewood's new owner?" His voice was hoarse with confusion as he asked. I took a while to respond. Rather, I faced the table where the whole Hartwell clan was still stunned and motionless. Elaine caught my attention as she fussed over her napkin, as if it were the most important thing in the world. I tipped my head and said, "If you're not happy with the service lately, feel free to give your feedback directly," in a quiet but clear voice. "Going through the front desk is no longer necessary." Aunt Cassie let out a sharp exhale, and Haley Connor's cousin, who used to make fun of my Oregon accent, was unable to speak. She parted her lips as if she had a question but was at a loss for words. As I walked to the far end of the room where Ethan's microphone was still resting on the tiny live band stage, I met every stare, some stunned, some humiliated. I grabbed it. My hands remained steady. "Good night." I started smiling steadily. I understand that some of you in the room may be feeling taken aback, and that's quite normal. There were a few uncomfortable giggles, but most people said nothing. I am in charge of Birchlight Holdings, which is now in charge of managing Ridgewood. My team and I have been quietly working to make this place better for the past year because we think a resort should be more than just beautiful. It should also be just compassionate and accountable. I stopped and turned to face the long table where the Hartwell family sat motionless, and I said, "Starting next season, just like with other guests, all reservations will be made online. No more verbal exceptions or ambiguous privileges. Everyone is welcome, but they must be treated equally." Elaine started to reply, but I interrupted her with a composed expression. I called her mother for the first time in years without my voice shaking and said, "I know you used to think I wasn't good enough to belong to this family. However, I'm not here to request acceptance tonight. I'm here to remind everyone that even if they are underappreciated, they are still capable of holding the center of this room as its owner." I put down the microphone. The years I was dismissed, viewed as nothing more than a wife, were sealed when I turned and walked out, my heels hitting the floor like a stamp. The resort was enveloped in an eerie silence the following morning. There were no chuckles at the breakfast tables. There were awkward greetings, side glances, and an unusual silence that persisted among the Hartwells, no one taking pictures of cappuccinos for social media. I was not present at breakfast. Rather, Ethan and I went to check out a new renovation project at the resort's southern wing, which will soon be the first solar-powered wellness and eco-spa center in the area. The Hartwells used to play a major role as if they had founded the establishment themselves, and by the afternoon I was back for the cocktail party for returning guests, which is a Ridgewood tradition. However, the arrangement was different this time. They rearranged the ballroom. There was a small stage with an LED screen behind it, an open layout, warm lighting, and no tiered VIP tables or personalized nameplates reading the Hartwells, where I would be introducing the 3-year development plan for Ridgewood. A few patrons grinned and gave me a courteous nod as I entered. I noticed Lauren standing close to the bar, holding her martini glass so firmly that her veins were visible. Haley hovered close by, feigning to speak to someone else, but her eyes never left me. Her neatly pinned voice was just loud enough for everyone to hear as I stood in front of the stage in a turquoise jumpsuit as the presentation started. I am aware that last night surprised, unnerved, and disappointed some of you. I get it. A few gentle chair movements. However, I'm not here to discuss the past tonight. I am here to share my vision for the future of Ridgewood. A full resort map with markers, more guest rooms, seasonal dining, and a community paddle sports center, all redesigned for sustainable and ecological use, were displayed on the screen behind me when I made a gesture. I mentioned that the Cecilia Foundation, a new initiative, is helping to fund some of these projects. For 18 years, my mother, Cecilia Marshall, was employed as a housekeeper in the state of Washington. She taught me to not wait for permission if you want respect. Create something they can't overlook. I looked around the room. Elaine's eyes remained fixed and her face tensed. This foundation will support scholarships and vocational training for women in the hospitality industry who are frequently disregarded for the silent work they perform on a daily basis. Additionally, Ridgewood will serve as the pilot site. There were a few dispersed claps. There was a slight hiss coming from Haley's direction. Lauren got up suddenly and left. As though protest had the power to alter reality, heels clacking forcefully against the wood floor. "At last," I said, turning to the final slide. "All long-term leases for guest houses, lodges, and cabins that were previously offered under family discounts will be examined and reissued under regular terms beginning the following quarter." A diagram of the cabins currently occupied at ridiculously low rates was displayed on the screen. Everyone knew which cabin belonged to whom, even though I didn't label names. At a table by the windows, Connor took a seat. He slouched his shoulders a little. They clasped hands. Nothing to say. He realized that I no longer required permission, so there was no defense. Finally, I said, I hope everyone understands. Although there are no longer any shortcuts, Ridgewood is still accessible to everyone. No special access, no back doors. Lauren's subject sent me an email 3 days after the cocktail party. Hello, can we speak in private, friend? I believe there has been some miscommunication. I sincerely thank you for your contributions to Ridgewood. Could we get together to talk about the cabin? Many thanks. Instead, I opted for silence. I sent it along with the note to the legal department of Birchlight Holdings. All internal billing records, original lease agreements, and Cabin 3 booking history from 2019 to the present. Lauren was unaware that the new system I put in place had reported her cabin for unapproved rentals during all of the busiest times of the previous 3 years, totaling over $41,000, all of which had been deposited into an account in her husband's name. It didn't ask for the money back because the freelance accountant had no record of filing taxes. The dialogue wasn't forced. I merely forwarded the documents to the state tax office, together with a letter from our business attesting that we never gave the go-ahead for the unlawful operations. Lauren was called in for an unexpected financial audit 2 weeks later. I got one message from her. This is what you actually did to me. I didn't respond to her message. Mr. Will Hartwell Connor's uncle was no different. The lease for cabin number 6, which he referred to as his traditional family retreat, had actually ended last year. He extended informal agreements outside the system by using his connections with the former manager. When I learned, I kept quiet. When he called to ask why there were so many new hires this year, I didn't ask him any questions. I merely gave our legal department instructions to give a 30-day notice to leave the property. No negotiations, no extensions. Now that cabin is owned by a nonprofit that helps underprivileged military veteran families by giving them free vacations. On Independence Day, they took up residence. The welcome letter was written by me. Lane, on the other hand, arrived one Thursday afternoon. No notice, no appointment. She looked as though she was going to a sponsor meeting because she was wearing a pearl necklace, white heels, and a dark tweed dress. She said, "We need to talk," as she entered my office. She spoke in a calm but obviously tense tone. I asked her to take a seat. "Ruby, this has gotten out of hand." Her fake smile barely held as she started. "We are related. Between us, we can manage this. Surely there's no need to make a big deal out of it, I am aware," she continued. "You've put in a lot of effort. You did a good job. However, if this is made public, the public will not comprehend. People are going to think." "I believe we should end here." Calm but firm. I cut my voice short. Her name was prominently displayed on the label of a folder that I removed from a drawer. I set it down before her on the table. After giving it a long look, Elaine picked it up. Her hands trembled a little. "Included are recordings of internal conversations in which you insulted, threatened, or coerced 3 front desk staff members into quitting because they didn't live up to family standards. You called a housekeeper disrespectful and ungrateful in an email. Additionally, there is a handwritten letter from an intern who was told not to get in touch with you because of the disturbance. I handled these situations in a low-key manner. It has all been notarized, and I look her in the eyes if she thinks I'm being dramatic. After that, I'm ready to make everything public." With her lips pressed firmly, Elaine sat motionless. Now, as though to brace herself against the anger simmering beneath her designer coat, her hand tightened around the folder. She wasn't in danger from me. I was obviously establishing limits. She once pushed her chair back, straightened her dress, and used the tissue to wipe her hands as if they were filthy. Before leaving, she said icily, "You'll regret defying me." My only response was silence. I didn't try to get her to leave. Someone who never once showed me respect was not someone I owed civility to. On a Sunday afternoon, Connor stopped by to see me. His mother left Ridgewood 2 weeks later. Without sending me a text, he simply knocked on the office door while carrying a cup of unsweetened coffee, just like he used to make for me every morning for the first 9 years of our marriage. Is now a bad moment? His voice was lower than usual as he asked. I motioned for him to enter. We were seated opposite one another. No pretense, no papers, no screens, just two individuals who made the decision to start a life together. I'm trying to unravel it quietly now. I'm not sure where to begin. With fatigued eyes, Connor spoke. I believed I understood you, but now I see that perhaps I was only aware of the version of you that I preferred. I remained silent. Sometimes the only thing you need to see your strength and resolve is acknowledgement. But I see loneliness too, he added. Furthermore, I'm not sure if you still have room for me in your life. When I worked through the night, he brought hot soup to my office and once said, "As long as you're with me, my family will come around." I looked at him, the man who had once driven me across the small towns of Oregon in an old Subaru. However, they never did. He also never forced them to try. I said softly, "Connor, you're not a bad man. You simply always took the easy route." Ultimately, I had to decide on the path where I could speak. We did not quarrel. The door did not slam. After remaining for a few more minutes, he put the coffee cup down on the table and walked away. Although we didn't say goodbye, we were both aware that the chapter was over. I relocated the Ridgewood main office to a tiny cabin on the lake's west shore a month later. Due to its poor view, the unit was once the least popular. With a new team, a clear mission, and a sense of freedom I had never experienced before, I started everything over there. I no longer look at Elaine's messages. Lauren's flowery email responses are not read by me. Now they are aware of who I am. More significantly, though, I no longer require them. I like to enjoy a cup of mint tea on the porch in the early mornings while listening to the sound of oars gliding across the water and the wind blowing through the pines. Some days, visitors stop by the small office to inquire about rates, assuming I'm the receptionist. Never feeling inferior, I continue to give them a brochure and smile. Recognition is not the source of power. It results from not waiting for approval from others to be who you are. And I didn't realize that for 10 years. I took a stroll along the lakeshore that night. Only my own footsteps, no lights, softly crunching on parched grass. My mother came to mind. Her night shifts, her rough hands. Even in the housekeeper's uniform, she always held her head high when speaking. She didn't ask for praise. I learned to stand tall from her. For myself, not for anybody else. I came to a halt at the small wooden pier that overlooked the lake. It was once the Harwells' preferred location for sunsets. It is quiet and motionless now. Have you ever been undervalued? Have you ever felt left out? Have you ever felt smaller in places that ought to have been familiar? Help. You are aware. To be whole, you don't need anyone's approval. And I hope you will share your story if mine resonated with you. Someone may need to recognize themselves in the journey you've already made it through. I'm still here for my part. In the area, I took back. To live fully as myself, not to win. Ruby's own in-laws ignored and marginalized her for years. But rather than striking out, she used skill and perseverance to subtly increase her strength. When she had authority, she reacted with dignity and boundaries rather than rage. The Ruby story serves as a reminder that sometimes we need our own validation. It starts when we decide to silently but unobtrusively stand up for ourselves. How do you feel about Ruby's journey? Has your own family ever made you feel inferior? Leave a comment below with your story. For more inspiring tales about life and family, remember to subscribe to the channel.